welcome. Hey, everyone. We're so happy to be live here to have a really powerful, riveting conversation about key immigration bills here in Maryland. And it's also celebrating the end of Women's History Month as well. So I'm Christiane. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Communications with Progressive Maryland. And I am here with three incredible women. We're all women of color, also coming from immigrant families. My father was born and raised in Trinidad. And so before we dive in, I will give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erika Puentes. I'm the Legislative Coordinator for Progressive Maryland. I'm also the daughter of immigrants. My mother's side of the family is from Ecuador, South America, and my father's side of the family is from Colombia, South America.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Ninfa Amador Hernandez, and I am an immigrant from Honduras, and I am also the daughter and granddaughter of immigrants from Honduras and El Salvador in Central America. I am also, we are CASA's Maryland Policy Manager, and I'm really excited to be here with these amazing women representing amazing organizations here in Maryland that are fighting the good fight for immigrant justice.
Ooh, I didn't know you were Salvadoran. So I find out today. I'm Lorena. I am with the ACLU. I'm one of their advocacy strategists. I'm Salvadoran and also daughter of Salvadoran immigrants. And I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, we are nearing the end of Maryland's legislative session. We're going to dive into that. What is legislative session? And of course, what are the key immigration bills that we're fighting for to protect immigrant rights and safety? But before we dive in, I know, Erica, you have to leave early to get to a hearing. There's always something happening. Always something here in Annapolis. So I want to start with you. Can you give us the rundown on what are the key bills that we're advocating for and where things stand?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first thing that I want to say, I know that you all can agree with this, is that there are so many immigration bills right now being considered by the Maryland General Assembly. The way that Progressive Maryland members picked the immigration priorities this year is really focusing on articulating our stance. And Progressive Maryland's stance is to abolish ICE, point blank, period, right? Considering all of the many immigration legislation this year, we decided, what's the closest thing that can get us to that point? And a lot of state legislators will tell you, this is like a federal issue. There's not a lot of stuff that we can do, but there are things that we can do to stop funneling people into the carceral and deportation machine, right? And so that's how we got to these three key immigration legislation that CASA and ACLU are leading on. One of them being the Data Privacy Act, to ensure that state agencies are shielding sensitive information and not giving these sensitive information to ICE, right, through either third-party ways or, the states offering this information themselves. The second key bill is banning racial profiling. And so I think it was this past summer, and Lorena can probably tell you a little bit more because the ACLU is leading on this particular one. This past summer, a SCOTUS decision came out that essentially said that racial profiling is okay. And we're not okay with that here in Maryland, right? And so we're asking our legislators to codify protections against racial profiling in the state of Maryland. That's number two. And number three, and the most critical bill this session is the Community Trust Act. And so, a few weeks ago, banning 287G passed as an emergency bill, was signed by the governor. A lot of legislators think, with 287G ban passing, that's it. We've ended collaborations with ICE. That's not true. We've ended what is known as formal collaborations with ICE, not informal. So we're still able to have informal collaborations with ICE. Police are still, in a way, collaborating with ICE, and that's something that we want to end, right? So we're closing that loophole. We're, again, ensuring that we do not funnel our people into the deportation and carceral regime. And that's what's incredibly important to Progressive Maryland membership right now.
Great. Thank you for that rundown.
Sure.
So I know a couple days ago on Monday, we just passed Crossover Day, what's known as Crossover in legislative session. Can you tell us what that is and where the bills stand in terms of crossover?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope Lorena and Nifa can help me with this as well. Yeah, but crossover is kind of like the unofficial deadline 3 weeks before the end of legislative session. It's the unofficial deadline that basically says if your bill does not cross over to the opposite chamber by this time, then your bill is dead. Now, never say never. There are, different ways of getting your bill to come alive. It's rare, but not impossible. So, that being said, crossover was Monday. Some bills made it, some bills didn't make it. We are celebrating that the Data Privacy Act did cross over from the House into the Senate. So it's now sitting in the Senate Finance Committee, waiting to be heard, waiting to get that vote, waiting to, go through the motions in the Senate chamber. Banning racial profiling, unfortunately, there has been no movement in the House or the Senate. It didn't make it past crossover. Sadly, Community Trust Act also did not make it to the opposite chamber on crossover. But again, never say never. There are still ways that, we can pressure our state leadership. We still have like 2.5 more weeks till sine die.
Yeah. You did a really great job with breaking down like crossover, and I think it's really intense, right? Because we're basically saying if your bill doesn't get through on this day, it essentially is dead. But it's not, right? There's still a lot of work to do. Also, if a legislator wants to really move it through, if the state of Maryland really wants to move these bills through, they're able to do so. Right. And I also just want to say like a huge thank you, because our organizations, and then we also worked with other partners like the IRCs, JFJ, incredible partners, that we were able to do a week of action last week leading up to crossover. So there was like phone banking, there was emails, there was bird dogging. We actually had people come out, like Eric and I were members. We were like people came out. It was like their first time being on Lawyers Mall and like handing out like one pagers. So that was really incredible. Again, if there is a will, there is a way, and we have essentially 2.5 weeks left. So there's still time to get a couple of bills out, especially the Community Trust Act and banning racial profiling.
Yeah, thank you for that. And those are great examples of ways that people can get involved with us and take action.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit more about ways to get involved at the end as well. But going back to what you said about the 287G program ban, let's take a moment to celebrate that win. Again, that happened last month. So Maryland passed the bill to ban the 287G programs, and Governor Moore has already signed that bill into law. And all of us were actually there at the bill signing, which is a really powerful moment. Ninfa, can you tell us a little bit more about what the 287G program is and why it's good that we banned this harmful program?
Definitely. So the 287G program is a system that the federal government has used for several decades now to entice local law enforcement. So for example, Washington County sheriffs, Frederick County sheriffs, to use their local resources to support ICE. So it's like a cheat sheet that ICE has to use local resources to enhance their mission. And when this person came into office last year, they used this program as the pillar program to back up their mass deportation pipeline. As we all know, their policies on immigration are not based on real data. They're not based on helping Americans. They are simply based and fueled by hate and by cruelty. That's their mission and that's their plan. And through 287G, they were able to weaponize our own local law enforcement to support them in that program. In Maryland, we had about 9 counties at one point that said, yes, we support this mass deportation program and we're going to use our local resources for it. We gave it a hard fight last year, and we're so grateful to the General Assembly leadership, to Governor Moore for their leadership this year and being very bold up front at the very early leg of session, right, and banning this program.
Thanks to community pressure.
Thanks
to community
pressure. So I do want to say, right, us, Maryland not ending the 287G program last year, and we see the data, we know the data, led to over 130 individuals being funneled into ICE by sheriffs like Sheriff Jenkins in Frederick County and Carroll County and Cecil County. So these programs really impact our community on a daily basis. 287G simply allowed cops to be immigration agents. And as we all know, civil immigration law is part of the federal government. Maryland and local governments have nothing to do in civil immigration law. That's just not in our job description, and that's not what the Constitution says. And one thing that we will make sure is that we protect constitutional rights for immigrants. And furthermore, the 287G program also created fear. Our communities are immigrant communities, wherever you look. If you go to the Eastern Shore, I was in Salisbury over the summer and in the fall, supporting local advocates there with the ACLU who were living in fear. And we know what Salisbury is. It's a beautiful community that also includes Haitians. Haitian immigrants who are the backbone of that industry, the poultry farming, and even, H-1B visa holders with the crab industry. And these are the same people who were living in fear because their local law enforcement agents were ICE officers. So instead of looking out for their well-being, looking out for their safety, they had a target on their back because they wanted to support ICE's arbitrary quota of 3,000 people a day. So outlawing this racist program is definitely a first step for us, and we can now rest assured that there are no active direct partnerships of ICE and our sheriffs, of ICE and Maryland law enforcement. But there's still a lot to do, and I know we're going to chat more about that.
Yeah. And I know, unfortunately, we've seen online different county officials and county sheriffs saying that they're still going to work with ICE, which is not allowed. So what's up with that? Lorena, can you tell us a little bit about how we can actually enforce this law?
Yeah, of course. Just to add, you did a wonderful job breaking down 287G, and it took over a decade to get that bill across, right? And around sheriffs, are they going to continue to utilize it? Are they going in a different direction? For us and for CASA and our partners, we're going to continue to monitor, right? We want to make sure that they are following through, and we're going to keep an eye on that. We also know that because there were 9 programs that had 287G, 9 counties that had 287G programs, they all had different agreements. And so Washington County has 90 days. And so while it was signed a month ago, right? They have until May. So their program is going to run until May. Whereas other counties, they immediately have to stop working or stop doing their 287G programs. We also know that 1 in 3 individuals that were targeted and deported was done because of Maryland's because they were voluntarily helping ICE, right? And so that is why it's super important for us to continue to fight and make sure that we pass a Community Trust Act, because that's going to close the loopholes that sheriffs are just dying to use, right? We've seen Frederick County, we've seen Washington, Calvert County stating, like having interviews with the Baltimore Sun saying that while 287G programs are banned, that they're waiting to use the loopholes. And we know that those loopholes actually target a majority of individuals, right? And so we want to make sure that we're able to shut that down. And we have 2.5 weeks left. And so we want to keep going. Another thing that the General Assembly has done, and I just want to make sure I have this correct, but they amended the budget to condition certain funding to localities on their compliance, right? And so if a county does not end their 287G program, that's going to hurt their funding. And so we want to make sure that we're monitoring as partners. And again, I want to mention the IRCs because it's the Immigrant Rights Collective. They have a huge network, right? They're helping folks who are either going through deportation, their families are being impacted, or just being able to do these like really great trainings, because there's only so much that like 2 or 3 organizations can do, right? We need to work with as many orgs and as many groups as possible to be able to protect our communities. And so we're going to keep monitoring, making sure that they're complying. I'm glad that the General Assembly did add that line within the budget to make sure that it gives an extra push for counties to follow and to comply with this law. But again, we can't stop here. We have to make sure that these loopholes are closed, because we know that they're going to continue to target and deport, and that they're going to do this at a really scary high number. We know what ICE does, and they just separate families, and it's all part of like the larger white supremacy, right? This is not about public safety. This is about racism.
point blank period to what you said. This isn't about safety. This is about racism. Let's dive a little bit more into that. Ninfa, can you tell us a little bit more about what the Community Trust Act is, why it's so critical, and what can we do in these last couple of weeks to push it?
We, our CASA, came into the legislative session with a priority agenda focused on our members. And our members are individuals all over Maryland, primarily working class, immigrant, indigenous, Afro-descendant, and Black Marylanders. And within the immigrant population, we see folks from like the top 5 countries that include Latin American countries like the DR, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, also Cameroon and Nigeria are up there. So we know that Maryland is such a diverse state, and we know that immigrant Marylanders are part of the fabric of our beautiful state. And also, just on the more nuts and bullets part, immigrants are running our economy. We are on the eve of the 2nd anniversary of the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, where 6 Marylanders lost their lives. These were 6 men, like my father, who are construction workers who were doing what they do to put bread and food on the table for their families. And while they were doing that, they were also fixing our infrastructure and building our bridges and making sure that we have the infrastructure that we need here in the state. So we know that immigrants are integral to our state. And that is why the 287G ban and ensuring that as a state we are not collaborating directly with ICE and formally with ICE is such a big win for our community. But unfortunately, there are still these informal loopholes. And we know that ICE is all about loopholes. Stories like Rabiatu Kuyate, a mother who was, detained and then illegally deported to a country where she's not from. Stories like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a father who was likewise detained, wrongly charged, deported, and then brought back, and is a fight that we are continuing. ICE does not care about the law. ICE does not care about the Constitution, and neither do any federal agencies at this point. This is a rogue regime. But in Maryland, we still have values. In Maryland, we know that there is a Constitution, and we know that immigrant rights are constitutional rights, and constitutional rights are immigrant rights. I myself am a green card holder. I'm not a citizen, and I've lived in this country all of my life. And this is home. And one of the main things that has impressed me is our structure of government and how, yes, even non-citizens have rights, even immigrants have rights. And this is something that I think certain individuals forget. But the Constitution is a powerful document, and we're celebrating, 250 years of the birth of this nation. And we have to be keen to remember some of these founding documents and how they impact us now, and how also ICE is disregarding them. But back to the Community Trust Act. It's once again a measure to protect constitutional rights. It's about safeguarding our Fourth Amendment and due process principles. And it will end these informal loopholes that, unfortunately, counties like Baltimore County are engaging in. Counties like Washington County are engaging in. So this is an issue that really spans across all of our counties, not just a certain set of counties. What we are currently doing is allowing ICE to continue to use our resources, allowing ICE to continue to use staff time, Maryland taxpayer dollars, to put Marylanders into the ICE deportation pipeline. This is happening through the criminal justice system. So these informal partnerships, right, are when individuals are found in the criminal justice system and they're in the local detention center or in a local jail. So they have been either charged with something or they have to go through the legal and judicial process. But I think we all stand behind someone's innocence until they're proven guilty. That's just the core basis of our legal system. What collaborating with ICE is doing is putting people who have no convictions. The data is very clear. Over 80% of those individuals that have been in a local detention center or in a local jail that have been transferred to ICE have no criminal record. And we know that. We see that. My father was deported by ICE. He was taken in Minneapolis, right? And we see the stories of Kilmar, of Rabiatu. This is something that we live with every day. We don't have to look at the data. we live with it. So once again, the Community Trust Act is making it clear that regardless if it's 287G, regardless if it's through a local program, we say no to being part of this regime's mass deportation pipeline. And we say no to acting as camps for ICE detention in Maryland. We refuse to use our local detention centers as ICE camps for people to be turned over to ICE. And then in addition to the Community Trust Act in the 287G priorities, right, the Data Privacy Act is also a priority that we've been working on. And ending detention, stopping detention camps from being built and run in Maryland is definitely a top priority that we are supporting legislation to ensure that we don't have any of that here in Maryland.
There's also no legal obligation on Maryland's end, right, to collaborate with ICE. All of this is done voluntarily. There is no legal obligation. And so the obligation that Maryland has and the legislators have to Marylanders is to protect them and is to protect us, right? To protect our families. And so that's a huge thing. People who are being targeted and deported have no convictions, right? Or they have charges, but there's no conviction. And there's no legal obligation for them, for Maryland to continue to voluntarily work with ICE. I just also want to give like a win, right? In Hagerstown, community really came together. There were different coalitions, there were different groups organizing. And again, it's like people power, right? Because of people power, there's pressure then on our legislators or on our elected officials to be able to make those moves and to protect the communities. And they were able to pause the detention center. And so I know they're going to continue to work on that because that pause is temporary, but that's a huge win because they were ready to go, and ICE and this administration tends to not follow rules. So that was a really big win. And the other thing I want to point out is the racial justice component when it comes to immigration justice, right? A lot of individuals that are targeted are Black and brown, but we also know that Black immigrants are just targeted at a different rate. And just, I don't know, just it's a racial justice issue that we need to look into, and we need to protect as many people as possible. And that's why the Community Trust Act and these other bills are really essential to protect our communities.
And one thing that I would add, particularly in Hagerstown, right? We're looking at Western Maryland. We're looking at a part of the state where natural disaster struck about almost a year ago, and where the federal government said nothing. The federal government did not come to the aid. But now they're investing millions of dollars for a warehouse to supposedly house people. The values that we honor here in Maryland are about standing up for each other, loving our neighbors, and ensuring the government works for the people. And that's just not what we're seeing with the federal government. So we need our local and our state government officials to stand up for us and to fight back for us, because the federal government is beating and attacking our communities left and right. But the only avenue that we have are state and local avenues for protection.
The Hagerstown example is a great example of when people come together to organize and put pressure on their legislators, we can win. And that's really important. So you both mentioned a couple of our other key legislative priorities that we want to dive a little bit deeper into, the Data Privacy Act, as well as the bill to ban racial profiling. I think let's start with the bill to ban racial profiling. Lorena, if you want to tell us what that bill does.
Yeah, of course. I think Erica referenced this earlier when she talked about the ruling that happened, and that was with Vasquez Perdomo v. Nome. And that was in 2025. And so basically that undermined a lot of the protections that we have when it comes to racial profiling. And that essentially what we're saying with banning racial profiling is that no one should be stopped based on the perception of someone's race, their ethnicity, if they're speaking Spanish, if they're speaking Haitian Creole, whatever language it is, right? No one should be stopped by that. And no one's 4th and 14th Amendment should be violated. Because what we're seeing with this administration and the violations that they have done, and because of this ruling, we want to make sure that as a state and as Marylanders, we're being protected and that we can strengthen those rights and those protections. And so with banning racial profiling at the state of Maryland, that would protect a lot of Marylanders. And so what we're trying to do with that bill, even though it did not cross over, we're still working on that. And what we know is federal or state courts tend to interpret the Constitution in a similar manner that federal courts are doing it. And so we want to codify those protections against racial profiling to be able to protect all Marylanders. And so we're still working on that. We're not giving up. Again, we have 2.5 weeks left. And so we're doing as much as we can, whether it's bird dogging, making phone calls, talking to legislators, because we need to make this through. And that case that I referenced with Vasquez Perdomo, it was around that. It was around people speaking Spanish. It's around someone looking like they're Latino or Hispanic, Black or brown. And so that is also ties into immigration. And again, it ties into racial justice. And so this is a really critical piece of legislation that we need to see through.
And now going to the Data Privacy Act, Ninfa, do you want to say a little bit about that bill?
Yes, so the Data Privacy Act was the third pillar of We Are CASA's legislative agenda, in addition to ensuring we have no camps in Maryland. This bill really seeks to do is ensure that our data is protected. We know that ICE is the most funded agency. They have more money than we do as a state. So once again, reiterating the fact that we do not need to be spending our dollars doing ICE's job. And with all of this money, ICE has been able to contract with companies like Palantir, with Flock, to get video, to get footage, to get surveillance. We are living in a highly surveillanced environment. And ICE is able to use that to find and then detain and then deport people, to separate families. So the Data Privacy Act is critical, not just to immigrants, right? But it's critical for the safety and the security of all Marylanders. That data is not distinguished between a immigrant Marylander or a citizen Marylander. This is a bill that really expands across state agencies to protect our data privacy. It stops ICE from being able to stalk us online. So we are stopping this predator, and we're also preventing them from bypassing Fourth Amendment principles. Once again, they are violating the Constitution. I don't think they know what it is. And it also stops them from being able to go around data protection measures to third-party data brokers. So these companies that make profits off of our data, they won't be able to sell that information to ICE. ICE has been able to use these third-party data brokers to go around the Fourth Amendment and the right to have a judicial warrant to actually access the information that they're looking for. It also closes the loophole of ICE getting our data through our government entities. As a non-citizen, I have to go to the MVA and get my driver's license, and I have to have certain documentation to be able to get that, right? That proves that I am a resident of the state. But what we see is that, many non-citizens like myself, when we give up our information, we need to make sure that we know where that's going and that it won't be used against us. So it really safeguards agencies like the NVA, like the health department, and ensuring that any information they collect of Marylanders stays within their limits and is only used for what is supposed to be used, not to target people for deportation. And we're really grateful to the House. They were working on Saturday, and they got this bill through thanks to the leadership in the Economic Matters Committee. So once again, I'm grateful for their leadership and the bill sponsor, Lori Charkudian. And now we're looking to the Senate to get this done. We cannot leave Annapolis without ensuring that our data is protected from warrantless access to ICE, right? So now we're in the Senate Finance Committee. I'm really looking forward to my senator, Vice Chair Hayes, moving this bill forward and supporting it. And we're also looking forward to getting the support of Senator Pam Vital, right? And the whole Senate and pushing this out. There are many different ways that ICE is trying to target communities. So between the informal cooperation and their ability to physically take people in, there are these less tangible things that they are able to do. And the Data Privacy Act is really a huge bill to protect information. And once again, it's not just for immigration purposes, not just for immigrants, it's impacting everyone. So it's a huge win for data privacy for all of us.
In our entire conversation, when we're going through bills, a common theme is we're saying that we can't control at this moment, right, what the federal or what the administration is doing, but we do know that our legislators and our governor and our elected officials in Maryland are able to protect us, right? And they're able to create these guardrails to be able to protect as many Marylanders as possible. One of the things I want to mention with banning racial profiling, if it gets codified, right? When it gets codified, because we know this is really important to policing, which is also a larger thing when it comes to law enforcement and immigration, that anyone working within Maryland state law would have to follow that state law. And so law enforcement would have to follow through and not stop anyone based on their race or what they look like or what they're speaking. But again, I just wanted to emphasize, because we keep saying like this administration is attacking us. And one of the key answers is our elected officials are able to pass laws, are able to pass these bills that protect as many people as possible. We're seeing a lot of local governments doing that when it comes to Montgomery County, Prince George's County. Baltimore City is going through some hearings right now when it comes to like Local Trust Act. And that's really incredible, right? And again, it's powered by people. Communities are coming out and saying, hey, this is a huge issue. We're under attack. Our neighbors are being targeted and deported. Families are being separated. Kids are scared to go to school, go to libraries, or just live their regular lives by going to grocery stores. Like my family, when this, within the last year, right, they had to change how they even go grocery shopping. Who goes? And so, in what language do they speak when they're at the grocery store? Something that personally, like, I didn't think about that, right? But like a lot of my family members and a lot of other communities are having to think, or immigrant communities are having to think and adjust their entire lives because of racism and because ICE is just targeting anyone and everyone.
So, for the folks who are tuning in who might not have ever engaged with legislative session before, what can people do to get started on taking action?
Well, first of all, for everyone tuning in, thank you for taking your lunch hour, this afternoon time to listen to what's going on. So a couple of things, right? The Annapolis, Maryland General Assembly session is a 90-day sprint, and we have 19 days left to get the Community Trust Act to the finish line. And there are many ways that you can take action. So first of all, knowing where you live and also knowing who represents you. We have many different levels of government, right? Local, whether that's your city or the county. And then, of course, we live in Maryland. Who is your state senator? That's a question that I need you to answer, okay? And then from there, you will know what district you are in and who your delegates are. So you heard us say that the House of Delegates passed the Data Privacy Act. They've done amazing work. And now we need the Senate to pass the Data Privacy Act. We also need the Senate to pass the Community Trust Act. And our senators, they are working for us. So if we don't reach out to them, they won't know what we need them to work on. So your voice is so powerful in this aspect of ensuring that they know what the community wants and ensuring that they know that you want them to pass the Community Trust Act. There are also other ways to reach out to offices. So first of all, finding out who your senator is, who your district, what district you're in, and who your delegates are. Once you do that, you will, probably be able to see the phone number. So if there's anything that you can do for us, I would say this one thing. Please, right now, after this, today, pick up your phone and make a call. Make a call to your senator and let them know that you need the Community Trust Act to pass, that you support the passage of this Community Trust Act, and that you stand with immigrants, that you stand with the ACLU, with We Are CASA, with Progressive Maryland, in our push to make this our state law. Next, as I shared earlier, tomorrow is the anniversary of the second year of the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We will be in Annapolis. We're in Annapolis every day, but in particular tomorrow, we will be here honoring and paying tribute to the lives that were lost. And you all are more than welcome to join us as we do so. We will be sharing postcards and be wearing a ribbon of remembrance for the individuals that we lost. And you can join us and take the time, right, to be here in Annapolis to go meet your senator or your delegate in person. Now, if you can't make it out to Annapolis, we understand, folks. might be in Salisbury, might be in Hagerstown, and we understand that's a long trip. We still urge you to make that call and also to send emails. And we have petitions that make this more accessible, where you can click a link, fill out your information, and after submitting that, it will automatically send to your legislators. So we definitely urge you all to take note of those petitions and to use them as you can. And lastly, just stick with us. Your involvement is so necessary. This government, right, works for the people. We the people, for the people. And if the people aren't speaking up, if they're not standing up, legislators won't know where you want them to push. And we are grateful for individuals like folks at Indivisible. The No Kings Day this weekend is a powerful way to take action as well. But I need you to bridge the gap between taking action in the streets and bringing that to the State House. We have 19 days left. If you're able to make it to Annapolis, we'll love to have you. There's going to be more upcoming events where you can join us for rallies and for press conferences. But for the time being, the one thing, make that call.
Phone calls and emails are super important. And don't be scared, right? Like if you're just tuning in and you're like, okay, I'm just catching up. Again, we have these action alerts that have all the information. We're able to break it down. So hopefully we can either link it in like the chats or put it in the chats or put in the caption. I think it's really crucial to get involved because again, they work for us, right? We vote them in, they work for us, and those are really important. The other thing I would mention is I think something that I really enjoyed this session is Progressive Maryland held these different like sessions on like Annapolis 101, how to navigate the MGA website, which for some reason is like really difficult at times. And that was really helpful. I was able to attend one of them. You can definitely catch that, I guess, in the upcoming months, getting closer to the next legislative session. But the phone calls are really important. They do take note as to how many people are calling, how many people are emailing, and it does move them, right? Because if, they're getting bombarded by phone calls, by voicemail, and by emails, then they know that these particular bills are really important to move through.
Exactly. Yes, they do take note. So please continue to take action with us. Like Ninfa said, they work for us. So we need to continue pressuring our legislators to get these critical bills passed. And we will continue to share information on these bills, as well as the actions you can take on the Progressive Maryland pages, as well as We Are CASA and the ACLU of Maryland pages as well. So make sure that you are following all of us and following along to get these bills passed. With that, I think we'll end here, but thank you so much, Ninfa and Lorena, and Erica, who had to leave early for a hearing right now, for sitting down with us and chatting about this critical immigration legislation this session. We're gonna make it through past the finish line in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you for having us. And again, it's not over. We are going to go into the last day until the confetti and the balloons are coming down from the House and the Senate, because these are really important, right? And we want to protect as many Marylanders as possible. So we're not done. We're going to keep fighting, and we're going to be here in Annapolis.
We're fired up. Are you?
Exactly. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.